guys so much for being here. I want to start first by just thanking you again for your commitment that you have put into our problem of practice, not only for your students, but also as a team for collaborating. This was our very first PDSA cycle, and your dedication and expertise has really made an impact on not only our students, but our instructional practices. So for today's meeting, it's really just an opportunity to reflect not only on our student outcomes, but also on our own professional growth as educators and as collaborators. So I want this to be a safe environment and have honest reflection. So all of our responses are going to remain confidential and solely be used for my PASL assessment. So for that reason, no names will be used on the video. But I'd like to begin with talking about instructional growth. So what was one moment you noticed using this strategy really impacting in your classroom?
I'll go first. The moment I noticed that strategies were starting to impact the classroom was when our students were doing work, they were collaborating together, doing multiplication and division word problems together. And I overheard one student say, "Oh, I don't get it, let me go ask the teacher." And the partner at that time was like, "No, we're gonna use remember we have our cards, we're gonna use our cards." And so they prompted that, the other student prompted the other student to actually use the cards. So I think at that time, when me as a teacher, when I'm hearing the kids remember to use the cards or to remind other students when to use the cards, it's changing. The students are, it's starting to click.
Yep. So what I hear you saying is your students were able to peer tutor each other,
Right,
based off of the cards to help them get started. I love that.
yes.
And in my class, I would say the same thing when I started, seeing them use it independently. Some of my kids I didn't even tell them to do this, but they took it upon themselves to get a dry erase marker, so I can actually see them going through the questions. And then when it came time to ask me a question, they knew to go to the green card, and they would really look at, in the beginning of the week, there was like a teaching moment where like how to use it, what to use it for. So as the weeks progressed, the days went on, and they were able to use the sentences, and they would ask me from here. And now that it's been a couple of days, they're not even asking me anymore. The main one is the blue card, which is where they're asking themselves these questions.
Can you tell me specifically which questions helped the most during your instruction?
Yes.
The question list or the problem checklist?
Either one.
I think in general it was just you being able to use the checklist, like doing those word problems, those multiplication, division word problems. When they're doing those, just being able to actually just use the question and like getting to did I use a strategy? And then they're thinking, what strategies did I do? Did I do a strategy? And I think just in general having this as a reminder is what's working.
Yes, and for me, I think when they ask me the question, it's the vocabulary one, because some of them I realize they can do the work, but it's like they get stuck on one word. So like for today, we did a parallelogram, and the was like, I think parallelogram means they look like this. And I said, oh, that's not correct. What do you try again? And she was doing her own thinking, and it was just really me guiding her to it.
Wow, so it sounds like the cards were actually impacting their thinking towards an idea for the question. And then you had mentioned perpendicular. Was there anything in your class that they used specifically for vocabulary that helped them?
Yes, when we're doing our review too, again, a lot of times it is that geometry using, you're talking about parallelograms. In our grade, it's parallel lines in general. I think it means this, am I correct? And yes, you're correct, no, you're not.
So how do you feel the sentence stems and the checklist impacted the student confidence?
Oh, I saw the different, when looking at my data, again, in the beginning when we started this, it was they needed still a lot of direction, and now it's more like, they would even tell me, I didn't even have to ask you for help, I did it on my own. I didn't need to go to the green card today. So they're seeing that too.
So they're noticing their impact. Is there a certain student that really stood out in improvement based on your data?
Yes, I had one student, I had a Randy, and he was really stubborn in the beginning. He just told me, I don't need to use that. It's not gonna help me. And I said, well, that's fine, you don't have to use it. And then when we were doing our exit tickets, he was consistently missing it. And so I kind of talked with him. I even showed him my data without the names, and I was like, look at, like, compared to other students who use it. So then one day he tried it and he got it right, and he just looked at me like, oh, you're right. And he didn't want to admit it. And then the next day he goes, I'm just gonna use my card. And he did, and now he's getting them right.
Right.
I love that.
And I think too with Beckham, one of my students, Beckham, he shuts down, he gets frustrated right away. He's like that productive struggle right away. So I would have to prompt him with the cards, but once I'm prompting him with the cards, then he's more successful with it, yes.
So we really feel like the cards were the visual reminder that they needed, and it sounds like in your class, it wasn't even just the visual reminder, it was the actual use for the other students that helped him perform. What surprised you the most from this process?
Honestly, I think what surprised me the most was that, I don't want to say that they actually, but that they work. It's that productive struggle. It's getting the kids to actually do thinking, whereas us as teachers, we think like, oh, I've done the strategy, I've taught you the steps, this is how we're going to do it. But then when you're sending them on their own, a lot of times they want to wait and just let you do the thinking for them, but this is making them do the thinking when they're getting stuck in their independent work.
So it sounds like your students really showed growth in their critical thinking.
Yes, and being able to kind of like self-regulate, self-think, self-work
Go through the problem, yes.
To go through the problem, for sure.
How was your thinking about teaching and learning before this? How has it changed now from this experience?
I can say that I know one of my struggles is always my pacing. I tend to go kind of fast, and sometimes I expect my students to go fast. So seeing the checklist and seeing like, okay, this student's barely on the second one, but they're thinking, like, they're not just sitting there. I can tell they're trying to make it through it. So it helps me to see where they're at and their thoughts.
I love that. So pacing is definitely always a struggle, I think, for a lot of us. So the cards you noticed helped with pacing, but how did it impact a certain student with pacing?
Well, it also helped them to stay on task, because while they're going through it, especially the way it was ordered from like your first step to your last step, like trying a strategy. So really seeing them keeping track of it, they're watching the clock too. They're like, okay, I should be here, I should be there. And then once they see all their checks, their confidence was just there. Like, I did all of it.
I love hearing that. They're actually developing that sense of belonging. They're developing that confidence. So let's move into collaboration as a group. What did we learn? What did you learn from hearing each other's perspectives as we were doing our meetings and reflections? What helped you?
Well, I see the positiveness from what she is talking about. We're seeing a lot of the same things happening within our classroom. The conversations with our students, the independent thinking with our students, the cards are very beneficial to guide the students through their learning.
Good. So tell me more about the self-confidence that you're seeing in your classroom.
Self-confidence is really, it's improving, especially with the math, certain skills, the geometry, the vocabulary, all of those things. It's definitely improving when they're getting stuck on work. Being able to, work through the problems on their own. They're not wanting to shut down. I'm seeing a big difference with the students just getting started right away.
Nice. Well, I love to hear that. So how is this impacting our culture in our classroom?
It is a lot more positive. They want to do the work. They're excited that they can do it by themselves. I know in 4th grade they can get embarrassed, raising their hand sometimes. And I've even had students say like, I don't need you, like I have this. And they're like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I was like, no, that makes me happy. Like, you're supposed to be independent. They're excited to do it. They like that they have a little guide.
Right. And yes, they're feeling they're excited about doing our level up. They feel very excited. They're coming in and saying, do we get to do this today? Are we going to be able to do this today? And so yes, the excitement is definitely there.
Their confidence too, just like I did it.
Yes.
With no help, I could do it.
Right.
Well, I love hearing all of that. So do you think this is something that we could implement campus-wide?
Yes.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
And how would you think that would impact the school?
Well, and of course, I think that if we did it throughout the school, obviously we'd have to tweak them based on grade level, but I think if it's systems that are put into place that can be applied, and then once they learn the small systems, and then we're going to the next grade level,
Love that. Well, I do appreciate, I'm gonna be very conscious of our time. I appreciate all of your feedback. And I just want to thank you again for all of your reflection and your willingness to engage in this process. I know the work that we've done together during this PDSA cycle has not only impacted our students' learning, but it's also helped strengthen us as collaboration as a team. And so really what's standing out to me most is how we've been able to reflect on our improvement of our students' confidence and our own personal instructional practice. So I truly appreciate your commitment to our work and your dedication to improving all of our students' outcomes. Which brings us to our last 5 minutes of the meeting. So we're gonna discuss the week results moving forward, and I really wanted to talk about how we should adopt, adjust, or abandon the things that we've done from the cycle. And I think a good starting place would be talking about, if we could, what would we adjust from what we've done?
I think on the question list that they asked us, it was, for some of the kids, it was too many questions. So it could be like a little overwhelming, especially for our special population kids. It was like, well, I don't know which one to ask you. So maybe narrowing it down.
Do you think we
two or
should
three.
maybe
differentiate
I would say
cards?
differentiate cards, or even if we had question cards that came by certain units or like topics of skills,
A little more specific.
how we have our vocabulary words maybe like organized and by grade level, by like our grading periods, right?
Yes.
Then we could have certain question lists that would go with those skills.
That makes sense. So grading,
Yes.
grading periods, skills, maybe differentiated for our special pops, where it's actually smaller questions.
Right.
We could even make the vocabulary easier for the special pops too. And then what would we love to keep? What has worked really well with this strategy?
I think the problem solving checklist is worked really well. But again, if we're talking the other stuff, like not every problem is, not every question is a word problem. You know what I mean? So some questions, where there's not like a story going through, like how are we gonna do, maybe for instance, like dot plot questions. There's not really a word problem happening. So when I see a different type of question, yes, there's not a math action really happening. So what am I doing with this question?
So that would even go back to what we need to adjust is having questions based on the style of question.
Yes, because I feel like maybe these are more for like, those basic word problems, like the, not paragraphs, but the ones who look like paragraph where there is the action happening, right? So, but not every question's gonna look like that. Maybe like their fraction where it's just like pictorial models and it's like, first we look at it, what's the first thing I need to do in this problem?
Yes.
You can be by like T clusters. I'm thinking like our lead forward. Like this works for all the whole number operations, but not necessarily the other ones.
So T cluster, so that our our problem solving checklist could be a T cluster checklist.
Correct.
And that could also help the kids identify like, oh, this is gonna be a fraction, this is.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Because I know even like today, we were doing, help me with my brain.
Angle
measurements, and they wanted to put a get strategy on their paper.
Right.
Yes,
And I'm
and it's
like,
like,
we're
no.
not multiplying to measure angles. We can add or subtract. So they were definitely getting confused on their strategies because they had gotten into the practice of using this. And most of the ones we did at the beginning of the week were get with addition, get with subtraction, some sort of like that. And then today we did angle measurements, and they wanted to use a get.
So on this part, like for instance with that, did I do the correct strategy? No, you didn't. But how could we fix these cards or like adapt the cards to make them fit just that skill that we're using?
And I think that clustering would be beneficial. Is there anything that we disliked that we would want to abandon that happened during this cycle?
I don't think I disliked anything. I don't think there's anything negative about this. I mean,
I agree. Just those minor changes, just to help the kids be more successful with all the
narrow
questions.
it down
yes.
more.
So maybe just refine it, like you said, into the TEKS clusters and simplify more of it to match for our special pops.
Yes.
And then as far as our data goes, today was just a reflection meeting. So tomorrow we're actually going to look at our data results and plug in our percentages into the PDSA plan on that specific page. So our homework, our action steps for tonight are to please take your frequency totals and your exit ticket totals and just make sure that's already collected on the side. That way we can input that and figure out what our percentages are, and then we'll take a look at our predictions and see the actual data impact